so that you understand what we're actually doing here, this is actually part of the National Dormouse Scheme. Dormice are an endangered species in this country. They're rare, and they're on what we call our red data book, so they are quite a rare species to have about. The monitoring scheme involves boxes, okay, like this one, set out in groups of 50. So we have 50 boxes set out in an area, and the idea is that every month a trained person like myself can go around and actually check these boxes and check for young, check if there's any dormice in the area. Okay, it's an incredibly useful scheme. It gives us loads and loads of information, and it's a scheme which has been expanded in the last couple of years to start including, and the other sheets that I gave you guys earlier, there are 2 sheets behind those ones. It's also been expanded to find out what other small mammals are also in the woodland. Up to a couple of years ago, we never bothered recording if we found wood mice or yellowneck mice or anything like that in our boxes, shrews. Okay, you just found them, wonderful, there's something in there, you let them go again, and it was fine. Now what the National Monitoring Scheme want is they actually want us to record that as well. So there are separate sheets. The sheets towards the back of your pack that you've got there are for actually monitoring other species other than dormice. So we've got that in there, which is kind of new. For all of you that know a bit about dormice, because they're a red data book species and they're protected by the Wildlife and Countryside Act, okay, basically it means you have to have a licence to handle them. Okay, so if you want to actually come and do a monitoring scheme and you actually want to be involved with it, then you actually have to have a dormouse handling licence. Alright, it's one of those things you can actually be prosecuted quite heavily for disturbing dormice because of that protection on them. Alright, so again, it's something that if you get the chance, if you find a box whilst you're out and about in the woods, please don't be tempted to go and have a quick look and see, because again, it's one of those things, it's part of a monitoring scheme. Alright, if everybody found a box and everybody lifted the lid, the dormice are going to go, well, forget this, we're off, alright, or whatever, particularly if they're with young, alright, with the young dormice. So what we're going to do, what we're going to be looking at is, we're going to go approach the box. The way that you're trained to do this is you approach the box very, very quietly, alright, not easy when you've got the best part of 25 people with you, but we'll give it a go, alright. The idea is to use some sort of bung or rag or something to actually block the entrance hole. So it can be anything, okay, a hanky, a t-shirt, whatever, okay, as long as it's soft. Alright, we try not to use anything like a wooden bung or something like that sticking in the hole, just in case there is a small tail or something hanging out. Alright, something soft tends to be used. So that's actually put into the hole, and then what you can do is actually check to see whether the box has got any occupants. So you lift the lid and can move it across very, very sort of quietly and slowly, being aware that these things are very agile. Alright, dormice are incredibly agile. They spend 99% of their life up there. They very, very rarely come down to ground. Okay, they'll only come down to ground when they're looking to hibernate. Alright, so they'll drop down and they'll find their way into a crack or crevice, a log pile or something like that, where the humidity stays the same. Alright, so temperature and humidity are very, very important with dormice when they're going into hibernation. If they get too warm, as we do, they sweat. Alright, by sweating they then become dehydrated. They've got to wake up to drink. Alright, if they wake up, okay, the body then starts to move quicker. They've got to start using up their fat reserves. Alright, so if they wake up during the winter and we have a long winter, that tends to be the end of them really. It will finish them off. Alright. The hibernation stage is fantastic. It's an amazing sort of ability of the dormice to actually reduce its entire body function down to the bare minimum. Okay, so what they will actually do is they'll reduce their heart rate right down to as little as 2 beats per minute, and they will drop their body temperature right down as well. It's all about conserving energy. So if you find a dormice that's in hibernation, okay, or in what we call a torpor state, then you can hold it in your hand, it will lie there quite happily. And if you go onto YouTube and type in snoring dormouse, you will actually find people that have found dormice happily snoring. And they sit there, they're on their backs, and it's quite cute, to be honest. I'll even stretch to saying they're quite cute. But you actually get them snoring. So you actually get them breathing away and snoring. Okay, so they can look quite cute. By holding them in your hand, obviously you run the risk of warming them up. Alright, so again, if you find a dormouse that's in some sort of torpor or hibernation, okay, minimum contact with your hand. Okay, you've got to try and keep them as cool as possible, because if you hold on to them and hand it round, go, look, isn't it cute? And you take loads of pictures, video it. Eventually, what will happen is it will wake up. All right, it'll wake up and it'll do that sort of, oh, bloody hell, and off it'll go. All right, so it'll scamper off. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to disturb them in any way. As with any of these sort of small mammal surveys or any survey, you're trying to just literally take a snapshot. You want to see what's there. You don't want to disturb what's there, if you see what I mean. Okay. Dormice can, if necessary, go into a torpor state during the day. So if we got a really heavy bout of rain, it's quite cold, right the way, even during the summer, okay, they can actually drop down into a torpor state. So it's one of those things, they have a conscious ability to be able to just drop into this torpor. All right, it's a little bit like students now and again after a good night out. They drop into a torpor state, beats per minute 1, maybe 2, brain activity 0, etc. All right, so but dormice can do that of their own accord. So what they can find, particularly in early summer, is that they will actually drop into a torpor state if we get some heavy rain. It gets a little bit cold. There's not much food about. During the day they'll drop into torpor. Then in the evening, stops raining, they'll come back out again of their torpor and off they go foraging. Alright, so they are a unique little species. For those of you that have never seen a dormouse, and I'm sure, have some of you seen dormouse before?
Maybe one.
I think so.
1 or 2.
I'm not sure.
Easiest way to identify them is the tail. They've got a hairy tail. Alright, all other mice tend to have a scaly sort of tail. Alright, so if you find a mouse, it's ginger and it's got a hairy tail, you found a dormouse. Alright, simple as that. So if it's ginger, it's got a hairy tail, you found a dormouse. If it's a darker brown and has a hairy tail, then it's more than likely it's a juvenile. Okay, the juvenile mice tend to have a slightly darker coat. They don't get their full sort of ginger coat until they're adults. Alright, so easiest way to identify them. So fingers crossed, we'll find some.